The movie revolves around a woman during the Second World War, where she seduces the enemies to gain their trust. The film opens with a determined journalist recounting the harrowing events of the war in her diary. Choosing to remain anonymous, she is simply known as Anonima. As she writes, the scene shifts back to 1945, capturing the final days of World War II in Europe. The Soviet Union has launched a massive offensive from just 45 miles east of Berlin, intent on capturing the city. On that fateful day, Anonima bids farewell to her husband, a high-ranking officer in the Nazi regime. After his departure, she joins her upper-class friends for a social gathering where they discuss the state of the world with a sense of naive optimism. Despite the looming danger, they still believe Germany will emerge victorious. Their false sense of security is shattered when a massive explosion cuts through the air, sending them scrambling for safety. The scene shifts to the crumbling remnants of Nazi Germany, with buildings reduced to rubble under relentless bombing. Amidst the chaos, Anonima and a group of terrified civilians seek refuge in an underground bunker. The shelter is crowded with women, children, and the elderly, all equally desperate to escape the destruction above. Recognizing familiar faces among the crowd, nobles clinging to their past status or mourning loved ones lost to the war, she sees their fear mirrored in her own. In one corner, a woman gasps for breath, suffering from exposure to the Soviets' chemical attacks. As Anonima watches, a deep realization dawns on her about the human toll of the conflict. She takes a sip of water and quietly vows to record every moment, documenting the nightmare she's living through for her absent husband. Shortly after, during a brief ceasefire, Soviet troops march through the war-ravaged streets, searching for surviving Germans. They order the remaining German soldiers to surrender, but the Nazis, unwilling to accept defeat, decide to make a final stand. From balconies and windows, they unleash a barrage of gunfire, managing to take down several Soviet soldiers. However, their resistance is short-lived, as the overwhelming Soviet forces quickly overpower them. Major Andrei Rybkin, the Soviet officer in charge, receives a call from his superior, instructing him to halt the battalion's advance toward the Reichstag. In the chaos, a Soviet soldier discovers the hidden civilians in the bunker. Anonima, having traveled to over 12 countries and fluent in several languages, tries to distract the soldier by speaking Russian. Her efforts, however, are in vain. One by one, the women are dragged out of hiding. Anonima emerges into the street, which is now teeming with celebrating Soviet soldiers. The women are subjected to taunts and leers, creating a suffocating atmosphere of fear. Anonima, horrified, runs back to the bunker, where she finds a young Silesian girl being abused. Seizing the moment, she discreetly hands the girl the keys to her old penthouse, urging her to flee. Moments later, Anonima stumbles upon another scene of horror, a Soviet soldier dragging a German woman into an abandoned room. Desperate to intervene, Anonima follows them. As she tries to distract the soldier, the woman escapes, leaving Anonima alone with her assailant. Trapped and aware of what is about to happen, she keeps her composure. In a quick, decisive move, she lures the soldier into a dark room, locking him behind a gate before fleeing. Shaken but determined, Anonima approaches Major Andrei to plead with him to stop the abuse. Coldly dismissing her, he tells her that his soldiers are clean and healthy, free to do as they please. Disheartened, she returns to the bunker, only to be dragged into the shadows by another soldier. This time, she cannot escape. Anonima later finds refuge with a kind German widow who offers her shelter in an apartment complex filled with other survivors. While they converse, one of the abused women warns Anonima that the Soviets plan to eliminate all the Germans. Their discussion is abruptly cut short when Soviet soldiers storm the building, intent on abducting the women. Chaos ensues as civilians flee in all directions, but Anonima, exhausted and resigned, stands her ground. The soldiers find her and, one by one, subject her to unspeakable violations. These assaults become routine, a daily torment for Anonima and the other women. Slowly, she hardens herself to the abuse, resigning herself to endure what she can no longer escape. Despite her own suffering, she tries to keep the spirits of the other women alive, assuring them that they will survive this nightmare. But as the brutality escalates, Anonyma reaches her breaking point. After enduring an especially violent attack, she and another woman, Barbel, seek out Major Andre once again, pleading for an end to the cruelty. The Major, however, is indifferent. He reminds them that the German army committed far worse atrocities against the Russians, using their suffering as justification for the soldiers' actions. Despite her previous rejections, Anonyma doesn't give up. She approaches Lieutenant Anatol for help, and he agrees, on the condition that she serves him later that afternoon. Weighing her options, Anonyma reluctantly accepts, believing that, at the very least, it would spare her from the relentless assaults by lower-ranking soldiers. That evening, Anatol invites Anonyma and a few other German civilians to a party with his fellow soldiers in a commandeered apartment. As they all drink and mingle, Anatol and Anonyma engage in a lighthearted conversation, offering her a rare moment of reprieve. But as the night winds down, her obligation to the lieutenant remains. Everyone retires to bed, and Anonyma, resigned, goes to fulfill her end of the bargain. The next day, Anonyma returns to her apartment and is surprised to find Major Andre waiting for her. Despite his presence, she avoids him, still angry that he ignored her earlier pleas for help. In an effort to make amends, Andre orders one of his soldiers to fetch water and soap for her. His actions infuriate Masha, a Russian medic, who begrudgingly delivers the soap to Anonyma. As she throws it at Anonyma's feet, Masha seethes with rage, declaring that Berlin now belongs to them, the victors. Once the others leave, Andre approaches Anonyma privately. Expecting him to seek the same gratification as the others, she silently undresses. However, when Andre sees the bruises covering her body, he is visibly shaken. Without a word, he turns and leaves, unable to face the horrors his men have inflicted. Days pass, and the assaults continue. Major Andre grows increasingly troubled by the suffering of the German women, but lacks the courage to confront his soldiers. Meanwhile, Anonyma writes her thoughts in her diary, documenting her experiences. She refers to Anatol as a gypsy who comes and goes as he pleases, never offering permanence or safety. One evening, Major Andre and a few of his men arrive at the widow's apartment with a rare feast, delicious food they've scavenged. The Germans and Soviets sit together, a rare moment of uneasy camaraderie amid the ruins of war. However, the fragile peace is shattered when Lieutenant Andropov and his men storm the building, searching for a supposed German thief. The soldiers claim they saw an armed German stealing food and believe he's hiding on the top floor. Anonyma denies it, but the soldiers press on. In reality, a young German soldier has been hiding in the penthouse with the same Silesian girl Anonyma once helped. To intimidate the civilians, one of the Soviet soldiers starts beating an elderly man. Enraged, Major Andre intervenes, savagely beating the soldier in retaliation. The situation escalates until Andre nearly kills him in his fury. As the dust settles and the soldiers disperse, Andre seeks comfort in Anonyma's presence, embracing her tightly, a clear sign that he's grown attached to her. After Andre leaves, Anonyma quietly climbs to the penthouse to warn the Silesian girl about the search. To her shock, she finds the young German soldier, who has chosen to stay hidden rather than flee to Siberia with his comrades. Unsure of what to do, Anonyma says nothing. She simply turns and walks away, deciding to keep their secrets safe. In the days that follow, Major Andre begins visiting the apartment more frequently, offering protection and spending more time with the civilians. His bond with Anonyma deepens, and he begins sharing personal details about his life, his bank account, passport, and even the names of his relatives. But all the while, Anonyma continues her secret encounters with Anatol. This secret burdens her, and she becomes increasingly fearful that if Andre discovers her affair with the lieutenant, it could cost her life. As a result, each day becomes a delicate balancing act of survival, with Anonyma caught between loyalty, survival, and the looming threat of discovery. One evening, as Anonyma returns to the apartment after fetching water, she unexpectedly bumps into her old friend Elka, who has just returned to town. The reunion is joyous, and Anonyma eagerly brings Elka to meet the other residents of the apartment. The group of women spend the day catching up, exchanging stories about their encounters with the Soviet soldiers. In a strange twist of camaraderie, they gossip and even joke about their interactions, laughing as they share the ways they've adapted to survive. A few days later, the artillery general of Germany arrives with grim news. Adolf Hitler has committed suicide. Germany has officially lost the war. He orders any remaining German soldiers to surrender, acknowledging that further resistance is futile. For the Soviet soldiers, the announcement is a cause for celebration. They flood the streets, singing their national anthem, their victory assured. Meanwhile, the familiar group of Soviet soldiers who frequent the civilian apartment returns with gifts and food, eager to celebrate. Major Andrei sits down at the piano, playing a gentle melody that fills the room with a rare sense of peace. After a while, he retreats to Anonyma's bedroom to speak privately. It is during this quiet moment that Andrei confesses his feelings for her. He expresses his desire for her to accompany him to Russia, where they could start a new life together. Though clearly touched by his offer, Anonyma hesitates and chooses not to give him an answer just yet. At the same time, a drunken Soviet soldier stumbles up to the penthouse and attempts to assault the Silesian girl hiding there. In a desperate attempt to protect her, the young German soldier reveals himself and fires a shot at the Soviet, but it misses. A violent struggle follows, and the soldier throws the young German from the top floor, killing him. The noise alerts everyone in the building, and they gather in the stairway, horrified. In a tragic twist, the Silesian girl defiantly swears allegiance to Hitler, prompting the Soviets to execute her on the spot. The soldiers, now tense, demand to know who owns the penthouse. Anonyma steps forward and admits it belongs to her. Lieutenant Andropov seizes the opportunity and insists that Major Andrei punish her. But Andrei refuses, standing his ground, even when Andropov threatens to report him to higher authorities. It's clear that Andrei is willing to face the consequences to protect Anonyma. Despite the recent violence, the soldiers resume their revelry, continuing to celebrate Germany's defeat. Major Andrei, however, grows increasingly disillusioned. After some time, he heads back to Anonyma's room, only to find her with Anatol. Surprisingly, Andrei does not react with anger. Instead, he calmly orders Anatol to leave. Afterward, Andrei insists that all the residents gather in the living room to celebrate Hitler's demise with drinks, songs, and dancing. Despite the trauma and tension, the group eventually loosens up and the party grows lively, with even the civilians participating. Later, when the celebration dies down, Major Andrei once again seeks a private moment with Anonyma. He pleads with her to come to Russia with him, offering her a chance at a new beginning as his partner. But Anonyma, torn, declines. She reminds him that she still has a husband who might return home. Hurt, Andrei prepares to leave, but Anonyma stops him, and in a moment of vulnerability, she kisses him passionately. The two spend the night together, making it clear that Anonyma's feelings for Andrei have deepened into something genuine, despite the impossible circumstances. The next day, Anonyma visits her neighbor, Ilse Hoch, only to be confronted by a tragic scene. Ilse's husband, a retired military officer, has taken his own life, overwhelmed by the defeat of their nation. Anonyma tries to comfort Ilse, but her words fall flat in the face of such unbearable grief. Ilse, numb and inconsolable, remains distant, leaving Anonyma helpless. Feeling the weight of the situation, Anonyma decides to seek out Major Andrei. Grabbing a bicycle, she rides through the ruined streets, hoping to find him. But after searching for hours, her efforts are in vain. He is nowhere to be found. Disheartened, she returns to her apartment, only to be met with an unexpected shock. Lieutenant Andropov is there, accompanied by her husband, Gerd. The lieutenant hands her a note from Major Andrei, informing her that he has been transferred to an undisclosed location due to the incident with the soldier. As soon as Andropov departs, Gerd confronts Anonyma, his face full of anger and hurt. She attempts to explain the situation, telling him she wasn't alone in the apartment and handing him her diary, urging him to read about the suffering she endured since the Soviets invaded Berlin. She hopes that by reading her account, Gerd will understand the torment she has faced, the impossible choices she had to make for survival. But Gerd is unmoved, calling her a disgusting woman before turning away. consumed by his disappointment. Determined to see Major Andre one last time, Anonyma rushes to the military camp. When she finds him, she is filled with sorrow at the thought of his departure, but she manages to express her gratitude for all that he has done, protecting her, treating her with dignity when others did not. They hold hands briefly, the weight of unspoken emotions passing between them. As they part, they wish each other well, knowing this might be the last time they will ever meet. Upon returning home, Anonyma finds her apartment in disarray, Gerd smashing things in a fit of rage. She stands there silent, watching the man she once loved destroy the remnants of their life, but she doesn't intervene. There are no words left that can bridge the chasm between them. A few days later, Gerd leaves without a word or a note, disappearing from her life. Anonyma reflects, unsure of where he has gone or whether he will ever come back. In the final scene, the story of Anonyma's diary is revealed. When it was first published in Germany in 1959, it was met with fierce rejection, dismissed as a disgrace to German women. This upset the author, so he refused to allow further editions to be printed in her lifetime. As a result, Anonyma's true identity is still a mystery, leaving only the raw, painful truth of her story behind.